Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. Let's talk about this Mars thing. I remember saying that I would not want to go to Mars. Is that what I said?
No, that's not what you said. Let me remind you. You said you wouldn't want to be like the first group to go to Mars, but that you would be willing to be like somewhere around like the 100th or so person to go.
Okay, right. Once things have been well established and everything is good over there. That's right. But I mean, that trip is still daunting. That sounds terrible, spending months in transit. And space wreaks havoc on the human body. We know that. So now apparently there is some new technology coming to us in the form of propulsion. And this type of plasma rocket technology was first introduced in 1977 by Franklin Chang Diaz, a Costa Rican scientist and astronaut. And it's called the VASIMR, I guess you could call it, which is an acronym, stands for Variable Specific Impulse Magnetoplasma Rocket, which uses argon, and which basically, I mean, according to this article, a renewable source of energy found in space. And it's, and uses radio waves in the form of light, that, of course, I guess, being plasma. And this, apparently with this, it is believed that you could go to Mars in 39 days, which to me is perfectly doable. And it's very exciting. And usually when we talk about technology like this, it's theorized, it's not in production, it's one of those things that's 10 years away. But NASA rates a new system on a scale of 1 to 10 based on its readiness to be developed. And this system is at a 6, which means that it is ready to be tested in space already, pretty much. And what are your thoughts on this?
Well, do we know, one of the big things about the Mars One project and that initial community is that when you sign up, when you're in, there's no chance of coming back. There's not even a mechanism involved that would allow you to come back to Earth. So you're saying, I'm going to be on Mars if I make it for the rest of my life. Does this system allow for return, or is it not like, in other words, it could or it couldn't depending on the mission? There's nothing specific about this. This is just a propulsion technology, and the mission could be designed either way.
What I'm thinking is that this currently would still be one-way stuff. Is it possible that you could drop in from above and this ship could then return to Earth and be used again? Yeah, probably.
See, now, Lewis, you're talking about something that has been theorized extensively in science fiction novels, which is this idea of don't launch interstellar transport from the surface of a planet because you have to expend so much energy and there's so much risk to leaving the atmosphere. You have some kind of a space dock, so to speak, and maybe via a space elevator or something along those lines, you get what you need, you get people up to the launch area, and then you avoid the entire re-entry and exit process, and that is going to simplify things significantly. So now, Lewis, I think you're thinking creatively.
Right. Or like we saw the man who jumped out of the plane from space or right on the edge of it.
Well, it wasn't a plane, it was like a capsule.
Right, capsule. Well, I mean, that might be possible too. Who knows? And I would imagine it's going to be quite a long time, even after establishing a base on Mars, before people can come back. But I imagine that eventually that will be necessary.
Yeah, and I don't think I would do it unless I could come back, or at least there was a way where I was told that I could come back. Of course, it could malfunction. That's a risk you'd have to take when you go there. But the idea of if there were several hundred or thousand people on Mars of saying, I'm going to go for 6 or 12 months and, I don't know, do the show on Mars or something. Anyway, and then come back, that would be just an incredible, incredible thing. But would I just say, yeah, I'm just going to live the rest of my life on Mars? That doesn't seem very appealing. Not right now, anyway.
Yeah, certainly not. There it is. Check it out. Let's talk about a video game. It's kind of a video game from Google, basically, called Ingress. And not your typical video game. I'm fascinated by games like this that kind of include real life activities and mixed with some type of digital game. And this game originally kind of came out of the Google Earth thing. It also could have been vice versa. Who knows? But basically, it's a game where you as a person physically travel to a certain destination. And once you get there, you basically set up a marker that will be put into the game based on exactly where you are. And it has to do with connecting different points, and ultimately one of two clans, guilds, or organizations will win based on these travels and markings made by people. And I guess there are quite a few people playing it. Of course, this is not really, the game is still in beta, by the way, so it's not a full release yet, but certainly not a cheap game to play. But if you are someone who happens to do a lot of traveling anyway, it seems like a cool game that you could just kind of use, I don't know, supplementally when you travel to add a little excitement to it.
Yeah, isn't this kind of just an extension of geocaching, which has already been kind of a thing for a while? It seems connected, just not, I don't know, even the game element of it.
Geocaching, I'm unfamiliar with this.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe you should look that up. Could be some interesting background for you. But yeah, I'm finding myself not caring that much about this. I understand it. There's also there's for whatever reason this doesn't interest me that much. I don't know why. I mean, I guess there could be elements of it that are cool, but I don't know if this resonates with our audience. Does this interest you? Would you want to do this?
I could see myself doing this as someone who likes to travel.
Wow.
But it's also, I mean, in a lot of these games, online games, I guess you could call it, when you're setting up, there's like a community or whatever, but you never actually interact with anyone physically. But there are like meetups for this game, and I don't know, you may be contacting people outside of the game and working with them to try and win. And I have heard of other games where I remember someone telling me about a game that I had never heard of at the time that he played online, where he would actually get phone calls like in the middle of the night, and someone who he doesn't know says, "Oh, you need to go online and do this certain thing," and he would just get out of bed and go do it, and it was like it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm just fascinated by games like this where you kind of just take it out of just the digital world and include real life activity. It's pretty interesting. And this is a massive scale game, of course. It's worldwide. And I wonder how that will change the game when it goes live and people who live all over the world play it. Because, well, if you need to go to Iceland to mark some certain territory, well, you may not need to do that anymore if someone who happens to play it already lives in Iceland and things like that. But anyway, if you're interested, it's called Ingress, and it seems pretty cool. It's all played on your phone, Android or whatever.
All right, I'm going to look it up. I guess my interest has peaked a little bit. I'm just going to check it out and see what the story is.
All right. And here's a story about an ancient city that has been discovered.
Yeah, I read about this morning. It's incredible.
Now, how do you pronounce this city, David?
Isn't it, I don't have it in front of me, isn't it Heraclan?
Or Heraklion?
Heraklion. I think that's it. Yeah.
All right. Engulfed by water approximately 1,500 years ago.
Yep.
It has been mentioned by writers and historians. And apparently it's been discovered by French marine archaeologist Frank Gaudio. Stumbled upon some relics, and there are all sorts of pictures here of these statues being pulled up, and they're in incredibly good condition.
It's amazing.
I mean, I guess a lot of them are made out of metal, but I don't know. Maybe there's something about being underwater that perhaps there's less corrosion or erosion than just wind and what happens on the surface, because these pictures are incredible. And apparently the city was, from the 6th, 7th century AD? Yeah. And it's just going to, of course, add to all the knowledge about the world at that time. And historians will be going berserk over this, I imagine. Pretty amazing that things like this are still being discovered.
Yeah, it is. And it's so obvious that there's so much more on this planet that is yet to be discovered. There's new animal species that are being discovered. We've got this. It's just unbelievable, the amount of stuff. And every time it happens, I always wonder, how will this, when these things happen, you never really need to change your view if you have a predominantly kind of like science-based view on life. But depending on these discoveries, you do need to actually change your view, or at least consider how we are, the more we learn, the more your literal religious beliefs are in conflict with what we're finding in the natural world. And it's always been interesting to me how that plays out. And increasingly, you're getting kind of one camp which just says, well, both of these things can kind of coincide simultaneously in your mind. And then there's another camp which says, well, no, they kind of can't actually. If you believe A, B, C, D very specifically, then it's a direct conflict with all of this natural evidence that we're finding, or whatever the case may be. So I think that that's kind of an interesting thing that's developing now. And I can only imagine in the next like 500 years, when technological development continues to accelerate and we find out every 10 years we move faster and faster ahead in terms of our knowledge, that there's going to be more and more of a conflict between these literal religious beliefs and the kind of science community.
Definitely. And, in contrast to our first story, this makes me wonder if we should be putting more resources into scouring the oceans, and seeing what we find.
Well, that's the other thing also, which is even for all that's left on land that we don't really know about, the oceans are drastically, significantly bigger than the landmass on this planet, and they're mostly unexplored.
Yeah, imagine if NASA, despite their name and what it stands for, decided to say, hey, we're going to do some exploring here too.
Yeah, imagine if NASA decided to abandon their mission completely and just work on exploring the oceans. I mean, that would be incredible.
Well, okay, not abandon that mission, but do both, David.
Right, yeah. Or establish a new agency. And there is one. I mean, there are a number of institutes for ocean research and so on and so forth, but it's just the oceans are so massive that there's just so much to be explored.
Yeah, and it probably won't save us. Exploring the oceans probably won't save us as a species when things get really bad here, but perhaps being able to colonize another planet will. So in that way, it's important too, even though that's probably, hopefully, in the distant future. So there it is, Heraklion. Check it out. See everyone later.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.